it's proposed for each country now to have its commissioner time reduced to 10 out of every 15 years. And people feel, well, opponents of the treaty feel that for a small country such as Ireland, this would be particularly harmful because it is important for, they say that it is important for a commissioner to be there when the legislation is being drawn up, as we carry such little voting strength in the European Parliament and on the Council of Ministers. Is this the case, or?
Well, again, I think this reflects a certain insecurity in people, and again, I think it reflects a lack. Well, let me just make the point about insecurity. But the first point that should be made is that in the Nice Treaty, it was decided that when the European Union reached 27 member states, we would have a smaller Commission. So the big debate over the last few years is how are you going to have a smaller Commission? Rather, how are you going to accommodate every member state within that? One proposition was that the big states, like in the United Nations, would have a permanent seat and the rest of us would share things around. Another proposition is that you'd have an inner and an outer commission. We said, well, thank you very much for your consideration. But all we want as small member states is to be treated equally. We don't want to be better than Germany, but we want to be treated less well than Germany. So the new arrangement is actually, it's a very, very good arrangement because it's based on equality. Every member state will take a turn to rotate membership of the Commission. So whether you're France and Germany, or the United Kingdom, or Poland at one end, the larger states, or whether you're Malta or Cyprus at the other end, the smaller states, you're going to be treated exactly equally. And when you're going to negotiations, to come out with the situation that nobody is discriminated against, that everybody is treated equally, you can't do better than that.
True. I know there was a joke in the media, I think it was last week, about the number of ministers and junior ministers in the Irish cabinet, and then the proposal to reduce the number of commissioners, which who some people liken to ministers, for a block of 400 to 450 million.
Well, to be fair to people who make those comparisons, you can understand why those comparisons are made. But remember, the decision making is not done within the Commission. The Commission is the guardian of the treaties. The Commission is the executive arm of the European Union. The Commission ensures that member states behave themselves, and it does make proposals. So the Commission does all of those things, but the actual decision-making body is the Council of Ministers, and the Council of Ministers will always have an Irish minister there, and a Maltese minister for that effect will always be represented at the table. I was making the point that there is one other piece of insecurity, I think, that underlies this particular narrative of dialogue, and it's that people mistakenly think that our capacity to influence in Europe is just based on membership of the Commission. Just make the point. The head of the Commission, the administration in Europe at the moment, is a woman from this city, Catherine Day. Her predecessor was a man, David O'Sullivan, also Irish. There's only been 5 heads of administration since the years moved into its more modern format. Only 5. And 2 out of the 5 have been Irish. Currently, the European Union's ambassador, representative in Washington, D.C. is John Bruton, an Irishman. In the last European Parliament, we had Pat Cox, an Irishman who was not even representing a political party. He's independent. He became president of the Union. Our capacity to deal with our position in Europe is much more to do with the goodwill that we have built up and the influence we've built up. And one of the problems about a no vote is that we will squander that goodwill and we will destroy that influence. And that's something that we should avoid at all costs. Final point I make is when we did the negotiations on this treaty, on issues like the voting system, on issues like the Commissioner, on issues like the role that will be played by national parliaments, what we looked for was equality. And what we won was equality. So the voting system represents the equality of states and the equality of citizens. The Commission represents a situation which is ultimately fair because it is equal. Our Parliament, the Dáil and Seanad Éireann, have exactly the same rights as the French Assembly, the German Bundestag, the House of Commons. I'm a Democrat. I don't want to be treated differently. I certainly don't want to be treated in a superior way. All I want is to be treated equally. And that's all most citizens want.
That's a fair point. Of the more serious topics that has arisen in the debate for the Lisbon Treaty has been the proposal to reduce the time that each country has a commissioner on the commissioner to 10 out of every 15 years. Now, supporters of the Lisbon Treaty say that this isn't such a bad thing, that when it comes down to it, your commissioner doesn't actually represent you or the member state, and the fact that they're meant to act objectively. Do you feel that it would be a big loss for Ireland to have a commissioner not there for 5 out of those 15 years?
It is a huge loss, particularly for a small country like Ireland. And if you listen to politicians like Gareth Fitzgerald and John Bruton in the past, they consistently argued how important it was for a small country like Ireland to have a permanent seat at the Commission table, because of the fact that the Commission is a body that proposes all EU laws. Now we're going to be away from that table where laws are being proposed for 5 years at a time. And people will argue, oh well, Germany, will be away from the table for 5 years as well, but they're not comparing like with like here, because the reality is that Germany has a massive voting strength within the Council where the proposed laws were voted, and they know that Germany, with one other big country and 2 small countries, can block a proposal coming forward. Therefore, the Commission, if they're thinking about proposing a law, discussing it, they're going to take Germany into account, even though they may not be at the table at the time, because they know that they can block it. There would be no point in forging ahead with something knowing that down the road it's going to be blocked. However, if Ireland has a problem with something, they won't take us into account, because our voting strength within the Council of Ministers is so small that we can't stop it.
Okay, so do you feel maybe that the emphasis, there isn't enough emphasis being placed on the importance of having a commissioner?
I think it's very important, and I think that suddenly, those who advocated how important it was for us to have a commissioner at all times now seem to be shrugging their shoulders and saying it doesn't matter. And at the time of the Nice referendum, we were told by the then Irish Commissioner David Byrne that we would not lose our Irish Commissioner for 130 years. And suddenly we realised that in 2014, Ireland would be away from that important table for 5 out of every 15 years. And I think this is really important, because when you also take into account the changes in the voting system in the Council, we are not going to have the same power and influence as we had in the past. And people will argue, oh, with the Commission only, they only represent the EU, they don't represent member states. While on paper that's technically correct, in reality everybody knows that the Irish Commissioner looks after the interests of the Irish, as do the other commissioners. They do look after the interests of the member state and the government, because first of all they've been appointed by the government, and there's a strong link there, and that link will be lost for 5 years at a time. And for small countries who don't have the same weight in the Council of Ministers, it's going to be crucial